The Federal Reserve is calling for additional stimulus. They're almost begging Congress at this point to pass additional stimulus. But will they do it? Probably not. But we can dream, can't we? The Federal Reserve Chief Jerome Powell issued a statement yesterday, which I never get this, why they release a speech ahead of giving a speech. It's like, if I was going to give a speech somewhere and I'll just release it to the newspaper before I show up into town and give the speech. Makes no sense, but that's what they do. So that's what Powell did. He released his speech and it calls for additional stimulus. He, along with Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, will be on Capitol Hill today. They'll be testifying before Congress. I don't care about their speeches. I care more about what questions are asked and what answers we see from both of them. So we'll talk more about that in a moment. But first, I want to thank our show sponsor today. And if you want to take it, look, Wall Street keeps getting richer while you guys keep getting screwed. Why not take advantage of what these guys have to offer and get some free money from Wall Street? Get some free stocks. And if you don't want to use the stocks, just sell it and then use the money and put it right back in your bank account. I'm talking about my friends over at Webull. The only stocks I have are the free ones that I got from Webull. And I bought some Apple stock also. Just go to morninginvest.com/Webull. You download it on your phone. They're giving away free stock valued up to $1,600. So get that stock. It's free in your app. And then you can sell the stock later and close the account if you don't want it. Transfer it to your bank account. But take advantage of this Wall Street stuff. Wall Street keeps getting richer and doing just fine. Despite yesterday, they went down 500 points, but who cares? They got a little scared over that BuzzFeed news piece that told everyone that they were corrupt and Wall Street's corrupt. Yeah, they are. We know it. So take advantage of it. Get some of their free money while they're pilfering everybody else. And then sell the stock if you don't want it. Or if it's a good company that you get, then hold on to it for a little while like I have. And just watch it keep going up and up and up like the stock market always does. So take advantage of that. Thanks to Webull for their support. So the stimulus. Today in Washington, Jerome Powell, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin will testify before Congress. They will be grilled, if you believe that. I think they will be. I think they're going to field some tough questions from members of Congress. And they are going to have to answer some tough questions about broader stimulus. Now, look, at the end of the day, it's not up to them. It's up to Congress to pass this crap. So they can talk all they want. But we do know that Fed Chief Jerome Powell issued a statement and said that the government, quote, will need to do more to support hard-hit businesses, state and local governments, as well as unemployed workers in those sectors to prevent deeper scars from slowing any rebound. And I'm quoting now, he says, the path forward will depend on keeping the virus under control and on policy actions taken at all levels of government, he said in his statement, which he released a day early, and then he'll verbally say it today in front of Congress. But what's interesting about this statement, folks, is that he specifically mentions state and local governments. This is something, of course, Republicans have been opposed to. State and local governments need funding. He's calling for it. Will Congress pay attention or ignore it? My money is on they're going to ignore it. They've got a Supreme Court battle in their face. They are not going to want to focus on the stimulus. I saw some other chatter about, isn't there going to be a vote on Thursday from the House of Representatives on a new bill, a new stimulus bill? The answer is no. I've seen this misinformation floating around out there. Unless something happens in the next 24 hours where there is some sort of a new bill put forward and it comes out of a House committee that has already said they're not going to even look at it, and then it's going to get voted upon? Come on, man. It's not going to happen. It's not happening.
Come on, man.
Sorry, Joe. But I've seen some YouTubers with their clickbait stuff saying that that's going to happen. It's not. I mean, I'll eat into their house plant if it does. Mark my words. Thursday, if there's no vote, and I'm right, then I will not eat a house plant. But if on Thursday there's suddenly a stimulus vote on a bill that has somehow come out of committee in 2 days, yeah, I'll definitely eat a house plant and prove that I'm wrong. But a lot of things have to change for that to happen. So I'm going to go with no. The Congress is not going to do that. They've got a Supreme Court battle in their face. So today, Powell, Mnuchin, it's going to be an interesting thing to watch. because one of the big things I'm going to be watching is how Mnuchin answers the question about state and local governments. Powell says it in his statement that unless we get stimulus for state and local governments and for workers, we are going to be in deeper economic trouble for months, if not years to come. So will Mnuchin go along and say, yes, I agree. I think we do need money for state and local governments. Or will he fall back to his old tried and true and say, hey, we still have some money that's available and we'd like to reallocate that money. It's nowhere near the level that Democrats wanted in their HEROES Act, but those are some of the points I'll be interested to hear. I'll also want to hear from senators as they question Jerome Powell. Will you tell Congress to pass stimulus? And what if Congress doesn't? Will you guys step in? Can the Federal Reserve step in and pass their own form of stimulus? Can they do something on their own? Can they institute a federal bank account, which has been floated around? This idea of opening up a $1,200 or $2,000 per month federal bank account for all Americans who would qualify, who would be under $75,000 or under $90,000 a year, and provide some sort of a federal stimulus if Congress doesn't do it. But basically, the Federal Reserve is like begging them right now to do this. Now, I want to say this. I don't think that the Federal Reserve gives a crap about you. I really don't. Or me. I think the Federal Reserve only cares about Wall Street. It's a central bank. They care about big banks. They care about Wall Street. So by them saying this, what they want is more profits and security for Wall Street. By having 30 million Americans out of work, that's not good for Wall Street. Wall Street gets a little nervous. That's not good for the airlines. The airlines can't fly rich people. Make no mistake, the Federal Reserve does not care about you. They care about corporate profits and big banks, and making sure that these markets are liquid. They've already taken care of that. $7 trillion on their balance. They've already done that. Banks are liquid, just fine. Mortgages, everything, great. They're doing great. Even banks are starting to open up HELOCs again, home equity lines of credit, because they're doing so good. The housing market's booming, right? Larry Kudlow, the housing market's great. Everything's booming. Everything's great. 30 million Americans out of work. So this is why the Federal Reserve cares about stimulus. It's not because of you. It cares about Wall Street. And these indicators hurt Wall Street. And then I guess at the end of the day, they can have a clear conscience because they can couch it as if they care about the American worker. And they don't. They don't at all. I want to talk more broadly now about the stimulus and what happens if we do not get additional stimulus in this country. What happens if we get no stimulus at all over the next few months? Well, I want to call your attention to, it was a great piece, a lot of different data, and I want to take you through some of the different journalism that's been pulled out of this and some of the different data points that show exactly what's going to happen if we don't get additional stimulus. So more broadly, why it matters right now is because the bipartisan inability to deliver a stimulus bill is going to affect us for years to come if we don't get something in place. I'm so sick and tired of hearing, America's the greatest country in the world. Yeah, why don't we start acting like it? Just look around. Look around at Europe, look at Canada, look at other countries that have stepped up and been able to provide healthcare money to be able to pay in a pandemic. We have Americans that don't have healthcare. Just look at the front page this morning of the Wall Street Journal. Laid off workers cut spending, hunt for jobs as extra unemployment benefits run out. Yeah, these unemployment benefits have run out. They highlighted one woman in the piece who's like a recent college graduate. She can't find a job. She's got $25,000 in student loan debt because, America, right? Because we charge an arm and a leg for college, which we should have free public college in this country, and we can afford it. She's $25,000 in student loan debt. And she took a job at Target. That's all she could get, and she could only get a part-time job. How's she going to be able to pay all her bills? She doesn't have unemployment benefits. Those are gone. She doesn't have health benefits because, part-time at Target. and she's got $25,000 in student loans. She's like, I would have loved to have been able to get a job in my field that I studied in college, but no, it's just not there. America. So these are some of the data points that we're dealing with this morning. Take a look at this. 30 million Americans still receiving unemployment benefits. Okay, so we can talk all we want about 8.4% jobless numbers, and everyone can get excited about it, and Wall Street can get excited about it, but that does not account for the 30 million people who are still unemployed and not even looking for work, or their jobs are permanently gone, and now they don't know what to do. And by the way, how many of those people don't have health care, right? I mean, think about that. These people not only don't have a job, they're not even going to go to the hospital because they can't afford it, and they might be sick. They, and could certainly hurt other people as well if they're not being cared for properly. Look at this. America's 500,000 independent restaurants estimate that more than 80% of them could go out of business totally. Again, I want to call your attention to something on that, right? Think about that. Just one word jumps out to me on that. Can you guys tell me in the chat what one word jumps out to you? And it speaks to the wealthy, the haves and have-nots. Can you tell me the one word? Let's play the word game. One word in that second sentence there that I think is incredibly important. And again, comes back to my Wall Street point. Can anyone get it? Yep, I see somebody got it. Independent. So of these businesses, these independent businesses, 500,000 independent restaurants, 80% of them could go out of business. But you know who will be fine? Remember all of those chain restaurants that got all those PPP loans? They got billions of dollars in PPP loans. Remember Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, that's always so hard to say. Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Remember Shake Shack? Remember Applebee's? All of these other independent restaurants, chains that are going to be just fine because they got billions of dollars in government bailout money, while the independent restaurants are going to go under because the money dried up, or these PPP programs are not there anymore. And guess what? The big businesses are already taken care of because the Federal Reserve stepped in. All fine. All good. Cuddy Long, you got it. Gap Boys, you got it in the chat. Thank you so much. Yeah, the big chain restaurants, they'll be fine. They'll just get government money. They're going to be fine. Safety net hospitals are struggling to stay afloat. What are these safety net hospitals? Well, these safety net hospitals are those hospitals that people turn to when they can't go anywhere else because they don't have coverage. So these safety net hospitals are basically saying, we're bleeding. We can't go on. And then schools and daycares are they're bleeding without much needed federal dollars. They're going to go under. They're going to completely go under. I mean, these are just a few of the sectors. I want to go through more of these points. And so again, this is all what happens, folks, if a stimulus doesn't pass. We want to just talk about unemployment benefits, but there's so many other factors at play. So many other factors at play. We have the unemployed. We have the small businesses we mentioned. The lack of PPP loans. All of those loans are gone. The PPP loans are gone. We thought that there might be additional funding in there for some of these businesses to keep on additional employees through, if they extended it through another 6 months. Gone. Elections, of course. All the extra costs that have burdened states and local governments because of the elections. Where's that money to help these governments out? There isn't. State election officials of both parties from across the country have begged Congress for funding. So Republicans and Democrats have been begging Congress for funding to carry out our elections during a pandemic because guess what? The state's resources are gone. Airlines, let's talk about the airlines. It's hard for us to feel sorry for them sometimes, right? But the clock is ticking right now for tens of thousands of furloughed jobs, anxious airline employees right now who are going to face massive reductions when the government's current payment system expires on September 30th. Today is, September 22nd. We've got 8 days until all of these airlines, they said by October 1st, they're going to be furloughing tens of thousands of employees. those jobs will likely become permanent losses. Schools, we already mentioned schools. Between hiring more staff right now, distance learning classes, we need PPE for teachers who are actually returning to school. And yet President Trump yesterday in his speech said, we got to open the schools, open the schools, open the schools. And he said this, one of the dumbest things I've heard President Trump say a lot of dumb stuff. But when we are facing numbers like this right now, 200,000 deaths in the United States, and 1 million worldwide from coronavirus, and cases surging right now in a number of U.S. states and in Europe, for him to get up at the podium and say this idiotic statement, I nearly fell out of my chair.
Now know the disease. We didn't know it. Now we know it. It affects elderly people with heart problems and other problems. If they have other problems, that's what it really affects. That's it. You know, in some states, thousands of people, nobody young, below the age of 18, like nobody. They have a strong immune system. Who knows? You take your hat off to the young because they have a hell of an immune system. But it affects virtually nobody. It's an amazing thing.
Yeah, it affects virtually nobody. It's an amazing thing, isn't it? Nobody's affected by coronavirus. It's an amazing thing. Really remarkable. Tell that to these people. I mean, really?
Come on, man.
Give me a break. Just look at these numbers again. It affects virtually nobody. Yeah, I can't stand MSNBC. I had to pull a soundbite from somewhere. Please forgive me. By the way, I'm curious at these numbers. I'm not sure where they're getting the numbers, but I've been getting our numbers from an independent source, which has been the Johns Hopkins University numbers. That's the numbers I've been using. These are the numbers that also, by the way, the White House uses and the medical experts use. The states report here. So this data is pulled from here. So I'm not sure where there's that discrepancy. Nevertheless, it's right at 200,000. Right at 200,000. So we don't have a plan in place, and now we're entering the fall of the year. We don't have a stimulus plan in place that could help these hospitals. We don't have a stimulus plan in place that can help these schools. We don't have rural broadband in place that can help our remote learning students, our hardest hit Americans right now, those that, the 12 million that don't have internet access in our country. I mean, the fact that the United States of America, we want to sit there and say we're the greatest country in the world, and yet we have people being poisoned to death in Flint, Michigan. And that's not even the worst case of lead poisoning in this country because of our water, natural resources being polluted by big businesses and city governments. And yet we don't have internet. Come on. Give me a break. And I just saw today, by the way, Ireland. Now, I know you could say Ireland, much smaller country than the United States, but they're 2 years ahead of they put in place a rural broadband plan to bring internet to all of Ireland. Have you ever been to Ireland? It's not exactly flat. There's a lot of areas and treacherous terrain in Ireland and all through that area. You've got giant, if you've been where they get the, water from Guinness up in the Highlands, huge, mountains, difficult terrain. It's not easy. They're 2 years ahead of their plan to bring broadband to the entire nation of Ireland, all over the country. We can't do it. We can't even get anything passed. We're more concerned about identity politics and corporate profits and just in, making sure that either Joe Biden wins or Trump wins. And guess what? We won't rock the boat. But only Wall Street gets upset about is when there's that uncertainty. Like, oh, we don't have a president? After Election Day? Like, oh, who's our president? We don't know. That's the only time Wall Street gets nervous, is when they can't figure that out for a few days. Otherwise, it's just fine. They're all corporate elites. They're all going to be in there the same way. Just makes me sick to my stomach. So if we don't pass a stimulus, let's talk about healthcare. We didn't even really talk about healthcare. We talked about the hospitals. Most people are just not going to go to the hospital. I mean, how many people right now watching bought groceries and or paid their rent instead of went to an urgent care clinic and they knew they might have to pay $80 or $100 or something else? They just said, you know what, I'm not going to even go seek healthcare services because I can't afford it. This is America. We should have universal healthcare for everyone. No one in our country should have to worry about going, and getting stitches or something at the urgent care clinic because they can't afford it. This should all be covered. The richest country in the world is only concerned about lining corporate greed, the corporate profits of Wall Street, when Americans suffer. So if we do not get a stimulus, this is going to get much worse. These are all the pieces that are going to, it's not just about stimulus checks in our pocket. It's about health care. It's about broader unemployment. It's about a weight on the economy for years to come with 30 million or even more people unemployed. Collecting unemployment benefits, by the way. Wouldn't it behoove the government to try to keep these people off of that by encouraging employment, by figuring out a way to get people back to work, put in some sort of education programs and others, rural broadband so that every American has an opportunity to work from home, create a business, get education at home? I mean, the list goes on and on. So today, we'll be watching Jerome Powell, Secretary Mnuchin, live, testifying before Congress. We'll see if they can make any push, any movement on any kind of stimulus plan. We'll hear if any sort of updated negotiations from the White House and Congress. But folks, I would be stunned, shocked, blown away if there's any positive news on a plan for stimulus before Election Day. We now have the biggest battle we are going to see this year, which is over the Supreme Court death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and that Supreme Court battle, all eyes on that. That is the singular focus right now. And the reason it's the singular focus is because these members of Congress, regardless of where they come down on anything else, they can go back to their constituents on October 9th and say, I'm putting a conservative judge in the Supreme Court. Or I'm going to put a liberal judge in the Supreme Court. But this is the conservatives' game. And they don't care about any of the other policy issues. For a lot of voters, they'll be fine the fact that they're going to vote for. This is why Mitch McConnell keeps winning in Kentucky. The guy is hated in Kentucky. But every time he speaks, when he goes out on the campaign trail in Kentucky, the only thing he talks about is conservative judges, making sure that we put conservative judges, that I voted for this, I brought this up for a vote. We're getting conservative Supreme Court judges, federal judges. That's what wins them elections. It's not tax plans or anything else. It's that. It's these single issue. Stories that they end up keep bringing to the American people. Smash that like button, everyone. Subscribe to the channel, and don't forget, folks, take advantage of get some free stocks out of it. Go to morninginvest.com/Weeble. Sign up right now with your app. It's actually up to $1,600 now. $1,600 in value. I got to change that graphic. $1,600 free stock for doing nothing. Just opening the account. That's really all you have to do. And you can close it if you don't want it, but then you've got the free money and sell it, Take that, Wall Street. Boom. Get a little free money out of the deal just for watching our show. So thanks to all of you for supporting our show and supporting Weeble as a show sponsor.